A little introduction. We're here at the Veterans Affairs Medical Center. Today's date is February 26, 2013. My name is Carlton Cartwright. I'm the Executive Director for the Children's Coalition Incorporated. And we're here today interviewing John Brooks. Okay, and John, what is your birthday? When is your birthday? Sorry.
September 7th. I was born in 1940.
Okay. And what is your present address?
I live at 917 Evergreen Drive, North Palm Beach, Florida, 33408.
Okay. John and I are the only ones here present at the interview today. Okay. And let's see. What branch of the service were you in?
I was in the Air Force, U.S. Air Force, from September 1960 to September 1964.
Mm-hmm. And were you in any wars?
I was not. My enlistment ended after the Vietnam War started, but I had no direct connection with the Vietnam War.
Okay, that's fine.
I was also in during the Cuban Missile Crisis,
okay,
but that didn't affect me. I mean, the only effect that had on me was we were under alert for a matter of a week or so.
Gotcha. All right. What rank were you when you separated?
E3, Airman First Class.
Okay. So where did you serve?
Well, of course, the basic training in Lackland,
Mm-hmm.
and about 6 months of technical training at Lowry Air Force Base in Denver. And then
What was your specialty? AFSC?
Weapons systems maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
They called us they called it radar maintenance from the old days, or fire control systems. Actually, automatic weapons control systems was my specialty.
Okay. Okay. And you were telling me where you served before I interrupted
Okay.
you. I apologize.
Yeah, I had served from April of '61 until September of '64 at K.I. Sawyer Air Force Base in Upper Michigan.
Okay. But were you? Is that where you worked for your entire tour duty?
Entire permanent assignment.
Okay.
I
And
never left the States on assignment. That was my only assignment.
okay. All right. Well, tell me about basic training. What was your basic training experience like?
Well,
Before you do that, what were you doing before you were in the service?
well, I was at the University of Tennessee. I went to a really small high school out in the country, in Fairgate, Tennessee, near Cumberland Gap, and I was only one of 24 students in a real small country high school, and graduated actually when I was 16 years old, and went from there to the University of Tennessee, which at that time I think had about 10,000 students. I had to complete my high school math after I went to college because some of my math just was not available at my country high school.
Gotcha.
And I was not successful those first 2 years. I was young. I was only 16 when I graduated from high school. I was economically, I was tremendously challenged. I'm one of 12 children, and we grew up on a small farm. And we had no money. I mean, it's a miracle that I even got to go at all.
Mm-hmm.
But financially, I was very challenged. And I was academically challenged very much because, like I said, I really wasn't prepared for college. I wasn't even able to take high school math to prepare for college. And this real small high school, I really was not academically prepared for University of Tennessee engineering school. So I was not successful. I actually flunked out. That's when I went to talk to my Air Force recruiter. And when I talked to the Air Force recruiter, I made very high on my scores. And I was actually planning to go to the, at that time they had, in Harlingen, Texas, they had something called navigator training, which led to led to an officer training.
Okay.
So I signed up for that, passed all the mental tests okay, but then when I went down to Seward Air Force Base near Nashville, took my physical exam, I failed the physical exam. My teeth were in such poor condition. So my recruiter said, well, this is easy. You just go into the Air Force. As an enlisted person, you can get your basic training at Lackland, which will kind of prepare you for officer training. And then the Air Force will fix your teeth, and then you can reapply from within the Air Force.
Okay.
Which I did. The only thing is, about a year after I got into the Air Force, that officer program was discontinued. But let me go back to your question about my basic training experience. Actually, basic training at Lackland Air Force Base was really good for me. For the first time in my life, I really felt secure. I had a technical sergeant that, I really, really respected. He was just a little guy from England with an English accent, but I was really afraid of that guy. And for the first time in my life, I felt totally secure.
Okay.
And I had really good friends there, and I just felt the best I had ever felt in my life. Actually, physically felt the best.
Okay.
So it was a very positive thing for me.
Okay. What time do you have to get up in the morning? Can you remember?
Before daylight, probably
4 o'clock, 5 o'clock?
Maybe 5 o'clock. Yes, very early.
Right.
Got up there and did our exercises. Worked up an appetite before they marched us down to the chow hall for breakfast. Yes.
Right.
And I was actually chosen because I had taken 5 quarters of Air Force ROTC at the University of Tennessee. I actually was chosen, I think because of that, I was actually chosen as a squad leader, one of the 4 squad leaders, which was quite an honor.
Right.
I think that was another thing that added to my positive experience. If I had had one more quarter, 6 quarters, I was told I would actually have gone in with a strike from the beginning.
Right.
But I didn't have I had only taken 5 of the 6. I could have taken it, but I just didn't.
Right.
So I started out in leadership, and then from there I went to Denver.
Okay. So you were in Denver, Colorado. That's where you were stationed at Lowry
For my technical training, electronics school.
Electronics?
Which was great because, see, I was studying electrical engineering. That was what I planned to do in my career. And so electronic was my interest in the first place, and I had made very good scores in it. So I was very happy to learn about electronics in Denver, and it was a beautiful place. There was a church that reached out to us there in Denver and made friends off base through the church, and we did activities off base, and Denver also was a great experience.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so how long were you there? 20 weeks?
About that, I say, about maybe 5 months. I actually left Denver in April of 1961.
Okay.
I went there in October, so I guess from October to April, about almost 6 months.
Yeah. Okay. All right. 24 weeks. So how was the food so far, by the way? How was the food in basic training?
Actually, I thought it was good.
Okay.
I didn't complain, really.
Tech school, same?
Same.
All right. Quarters, everything was good?
I enjoyed it, yes.
Okay.
Now, actually, in quarters in Denver, now one thing, this was in the wintertime, and the heat was really dry. Actually, we stayed in a sort of a barn. The barracks was a wood building. I was on the 2nd floor, there was the 1st floor, but it was just open beds, there was no privacy at all.
Right.
Actually, due to the altitude and also we had cold heat, the air was really dry, and I did suffer from the dryness. I remember that.
Really?
Yes.
Dehydrated?
Right, dehydrated, because they probably didn't humidify the air back in those days. They probably did later. I'm
Were you always thirsty? Or?
Right, and that was actually one of the very few negative things I remember about my experience in Denver.
Right.
But there again, I was chosen for leadership. My sergeant named me as the fire chief.
Oh.
And I was responsible for seeing that the coal furnace in our building was certain periods of the week. I don't remember exactly, maybe 2 or 3 days a week. I was responsible for seeing that, or maybe for the entire week. But anyway, I was responsible for seeing that the coal stayed in the furnace was always stoked.
Right.
And of course, I didn't do it myself. I had people who reported to me that did that, and that again was a thing that made it a positive experience for me, because that's the first time in my life that I really had people actually directly responsible to me.
Right.
And so that was a positive thing for me.
Okay. Okay. All right. So, did you stay on the base the entire time? What did you do to entertain yourself when you weren't in school? That was like you were there for 6 months. What did you do?
Well, we could take the bus into town. We went into weekends. We'd go down to the skating rink. I did almost every weekend. Went skating down in Denver, and like I say, there was a church down in Denver that actually came to the bus. They came to the base and picked us up and took us to church on Sundays, and sometimes even took us out to lunch on Sunday.
Right.
Which was and church meant a lot to me. I grew up in church, so that was a very positive experience. And they also took us on a couple of trips up in the mountains. I actually learned to ice skate in Denver, up at some park up in the mountains. First time I'd ever had that experience in my life.
Wasn't it cold?
It was, but we had clothing. It was okay. It was, and it was in December.
I heard you say you did ice skating. Did you do any skiing?
I didn't do skiing, no, but I did do ice skating.
Okay.
I learned to ski though in Upper Michigan later.
Through your basic training and through your technical school, so far, how did you communicate with your family up to this point?
Just about, that was in the 1960s. You didn't have email. My parents actually did have a phone. When I was growing up, there was no phone in our home. We didn't even really have a phone in our home until I left home. And in fact, you may find this hard to believe, I was actually 8 years old when our home first had electricity.
Okay, I
I
believe
can
it.
remember the days when I studied by kerosene lamp. But we were way back in the country, and I was actually 8 years old when they first hooked up electricity to our home in the hills. But as to communicating, primarily by letters.
I got you. Okay. All right. Interesting. Okay. Why did you choose the Air Force over the other services?
Well, I thought of the Air Force. I was interested in the electrical engineering, the technical area, and I always thought of it as the more technical of the services. I compared to the Army and Marines, as you know, the soldiers, the foot soldiers, and Navy. Growing up away from water, I won't say I was afraid of water. I actually did learn to swim for the first time when I was in college.
Mm-hmm.
But the Navy didn't appeal to me because of being out on the boat in the ocean. So,
why did you want to go in the military anyway?
well, I guess it comes down to I needed a job because, like I said, my college career was, I just couldn't make the grade.
Okay.
And like I said, this officer idea appealed to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, and incidentally, I said that the navigator training program was ended about a year after I went in. But actually, during the Cuban Missile Crisis, they reinstated the navigator training program.
Got it.
So I reapplied, went in, and this was after probably 2.5 years, I did have to take the mental exams all again, and I passed them all again. But this time, when I took the physical exam, my color perception didn't make the grade. And so but actually by that time I was close to the end of my enlistment, and actually another thing that was great, I took Northern Michigan University actually taught college courses right on the campus, right just near where my barracks was. Didn't have to drive anywhere, and I took some math courses which replaced some of the failing grades I had in college, and I took some other courses that I actually made A's in, and I actually pulled my grades up. While I was in the Air Force, I pulled my grades up to where I was actually readmitted to the University of Tennessee.
Oh, okay.
So by that time, I was actually interested in getting back to college rather than officer training anyway.
Okay.
So I didn't feel bad that I didn't qualify for getting to the officer program.
Gotcha. Okay, so any memorable experiences, more than what you already told me, while you're in tech school?
I guess just that it was, I appreciated, the training.
Right.
Had a very good, most of it was video, a video presentation program, and it was, I was able to excel at it, which is rewarding because, in college I had the experience, where I was making failing grades, but in my training in Denver, I did good grades, which was it was a positive experience.
Okay, good. So where did you go after Lowry?
And then I was transferred to K.I. Sawyer Air Force Base in Upper Michigan.
Oh, okay. All right. Cold again.
I went there in April, and I was told that they've had snow every month of the year up there. Not every month within a given year, but they've actually had snow in August and snow in July. It was cold. It was the weather. That was an unpleasant experience. The weather was really. I told people it was worse than the North Pole because terrible snows. I said all the snow I'd ever want to see in my life. But I did have a car up there. I bought a car before I went up there.
Yeah.
So I had wheels. And the Air Force Base was out way away from town, away from everything.
Right.
So it was good to have wheels.
Uh-huh.
And there again, I became connected with a Southern Baptist church that was just starting locally. They reached out to us, and that was a positive experience. I mean, good friends there.
Okay.
But the weather was dreary and depressing. Was the worst thing about it. But other than that, though, it was a good experience also.
Okay.
And like I said, I went to college. Took probably 25 credit hours of college time while I was there. I got essentially over a quarter's worth of a semester's worth of college work done while I was there. Really, essentially no cost. They even paid for my college. The courses were right on the base. So it was really a great blessing to me.
Right. Okay. All right. Let's see. Okay, so you got some school out of the way. That's always good. That's always good. Okay. What was so special anyway? You said you had that instructor back in basic training, and what was some of the really valuable things that he taught you?
Well, I guess I just had so much respect for this man. He had total authority over me. And at that particular time in my life, this was good. This is something that I needed. I needed the security of someone having total authority over me. Before that, I was responsible for everything. Like I said, I left home when I was 16 years old, and in college, I was responsible for earning my way. I was responsible for everything, really. And my parents had very little education, and they didn't know what I was doing. I didn't feel like they didn't understand what I was doing, and there was such a huge responsibility on me. Mm-hmm. And when I got there, and the Air Force had total authority over me, I didn't resent it. I mean, it really took a huge load off of me emotionally.
Found a company that knew what it was doing, huh?
Right.
Okay. All right. What was the next thing? There was. So what was your job assignment in Michigan?
I was actually. This was fortunate for me also because I was assigned at what's called the mock-up. Okay, I worked on the automatic weapons control systems of F-101 fighter aircraft.
Okay.
Now, about 10 or 15% of the people were inside working on the mock-up, and I was one of those. that I didn't work out on the airplanes at all. The guys that worked on the planes, they pulled these what they call black boxes. If there was a problem with the airplane, what the other technicians would do, it isolate it to a particular box, and they would bring that box in, and to me, and I would give them a new box. And so my entire time was spent inside, in this terrible weather up there, which was a nice thing for me because I didn't have to be out in that terrible weather.
Right. Okay. All right. And what kind of responsibility was that?
Well, I was responsible for...
Was there pressure and stress that was
Well,
affiliated with that job responsibility?
Because, you know, that was the control system for the aircraft. And, you know, the aircraft, as you know, is a multi-million-dollar piece of equipment. There was 2 men in that aircraft, and the safety and the livelihood of those 2 men, as well as that multi-million-dollar piece of equipment, you know, you did feel a really strong response, not only your patriotism, but just a responsibility to, you know, be sure that what you did was done right.
Right. Were there any job-related casualties in your unit? Any casualties at all in your unit?
Okay, now let me think. Actually, there was one of our aircraft went down in Lake Superior. I don't think they don't even know what happened. Lake Superior was a very, very deep lake.
Okay.
And I don't think the aircraft would ever been recovered.
The plane or the person?
Plane and the person.
Neither?
I don't think that either was ever recovered.
Okay, one of those, that was enough.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, all right. So, as far as being stationed in Michigan was concerned, tell me a couple of your besides that one, most memorable experiences while you were in Michigan. What were the people like up there? You know, when you weren't thinking about the ice.
Well, the locals were.
And how was the food?
Well, naturally we complained about the food, but I thought the food was okay.
Okay.
Institutional food is never like home cooked food, but I thought the food was fine. I really did.
Okay. Well, what about the food? Did you go out on the town? What did you do for entertainment there?
Well, like I said, I got involved with a local church and
Hold on a second, please. Got involved with the local church?
And like I said, I had an automobile. I could go out to the beach. We were near Lake Michigan on weekends. We could go to the beach. And in the wintertime, I learned how to ski and sledding, winter activities. It was, even though the weather was depressing, it was a good experience also.
Okay. Okay. All right. So did you always have something to do, even though, despite the weather?
I would say almost always, yes.
Okay. All right.
Especially when I thought about, you know, for the last couple of years, I spent quite a bit of time in the books, you know, going to college and studying. Right. Which was good.
Yeah, you definitely had something to do then. Hey, did you visit home? Where did you travel?
I went back to. Now I had an aunt who lived in Lower Michigan. I went down to see her a few times. But actually, twice, I actually drove my car all the way back to Tennessee. It was 24 hours of driving. But actually, I did. I went back to Tennessee at least 2 or 3 times while I was up there. Yes.
Oh, really? Huh. Scenic, huh? Very scenic.
Yes, it was.
I'm sure it was. Yeah, I've been through here myself a couple of times. Okay. Same way of communicating with the family by letters the entire time you were going. When you know.
But you were going to say about the local people. I wanted to get around to that. The local people had a kind of a Finnish background.
Oh, okay.
And we always laughed about the fact every statement they ended with "a nice day, A." They just, every statement they made was punctuated with a question mark.
Right. Right. Okay. Yes. That's
But
anyway.
they were good people.
They were good people.
Yeah.
Okay.
Humble people.
Uh-huh. You caught me off guard with that one. Okay, so did you make a lot of friends while you were up there?
I did. Actually, my roommate, my last year and a half, 2 years, we're friends today. He was in my wedding, and I was in his wedding. Yeah, a very good friend, yes. And the first couple of years, first year and a half, I was in a room with 3 other guys, and all younger than me.
Right.
And I had some tensions there because all of them drank. And I don't touch alcohol. I'm Baptist, but it's just that I just don't believe in alcohol.
Okay.
And they did. And but the last year and a half or so, I actually had the opportunity to move in with a young man I knew from the church. I told you about going to a church out base. He's from North Carolina. Mm-hmm. And we became friends, and we were able to just share a room, just the 2 of us.
Okay.
And we liked doing things together, and so that was a really good experience also. But like I said, we were good friends because he got out later than I did. When I was discharged, he actually got sent to Vietnam and spent a tour in Vietnam, and I stayed in touch with him while he was over there.
Right.
Like that, after he was discharged, he went to college like we were both in college, but I actually went to North Carolina to be in his wedding, and then he came over to Tennessee to be in my wedding, and we're still friends even today.
Okay. Oh, excellent. Good.
Yeah.
Good for you. Good for you. Okay. All right. Good. Okay. Let's see. So the entire time you were in the military, I guess you had all the supplies that you needed?
Yes.
And everything you needed?
Yeah.
And we already discussed the stress issue as far as the job is concerned. You had responsibility. Okay. And we talked about what you did when you were on leave. Did you get to travel? I know you did travel back and forth to Tennessee, that's for sure. You saw at least every one of those states in between. Beyond that, did you do any other traveling that you haven't told us about?
Well, the only thing, I might mention one thing. In my unit, they chose just a way of rewarding us for our good conduct or good performance or something. There was about 10 or maybe 12 of us that they honored by allowing us to go to Detroit to see a Major League Baseball game, to spend a weekend. We went, they flew us in a military transport plane down to Selfridge Air Force Base. That was another Air Force base near Detroit. Mm-hmm. And we actually stayed in the barracks down there. And then we were, if we wanted to, we could actually go see this Detroit Tigers baseball game. Well, I and several of the others elected not to go to the game. Mm-hmm. It ended up being a 22-inning game that went till about 4 o'clock in the morning, so I'm glad we didn't go to the game. Man, we just caught, that was a base where people could get free rides into town, or you could take the bus into town. But we just went into Detroit to just walk around and just kind of explore the city of Detroit.
Okay.
And we did that, and we got back to the base probably sometime before midnight, and then after we got back home, we learned that the baseball game was still going on.
And you were in AWOL.
No, we weren't AWOL. So that's the only traveling that I can think. Oh, another thing that was a good thing for me, twice through the chapel, we were allowed a free trip to a place called Ridgecrest. It's a Baptist assembly in North Carolina.
Yeah.
The Air Force would actually pay for us to make that trip down there. And twice I made that trip down to North Carolina, and that was a very, exciting experience for me.
What did you do down there?
It was a spiritual.
Okay.
We heard speakers,
Uh-huh.
well-known speakers
Okay.
about spiritual life. It
Okay.
was about not a full week, maybe a 5 or 6 day. A Ridge Crest Assembly. I don't know if you're familiar with it. Year round, it has. It's a spiritual assembly for the Southern Baptist Convention, and they have they have Sunday School week, they have Training Union week, they have different emphases every week, and then they have the military week when soldiers from all over the world
Right.
come there.
Okay.
And so yeah, twice I made that trip.
Okay. All right. Okay. So. All right. So overall, you had a good experience in Michigan.
It was good for me, very good for me.
What were the last days and weeks like?
Well, I'll have to confess my attitude was not as good as it should have been. I didn't, my dress was not something that my TI was proud of, and I confess that I should have had a better attitude that last month or two.
What was the matter? You didn't want to get
I was
out?
short timer. I knew I was getting out, and
So you acted the part, huh?
I acted the part.
Okay. All right. So what were you thinking about when how old were you? Give me a little.
Well, I was 24 when I got out.
So what were you thinking about? School or work or what? Tell me what you were. Can you remember?
Well, of course, I had my mind was focused on getting back to school at the university. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you separated in Michigan,
In Michigan,
and so then you got in your car.
Right.
Where'd you go?
I went to Knoxville, Tennessee.
Back home.
Yeah, here's some other trivia that may not interest you, but
That's okay.
I had one of my college roommates at the University of Tennessee went to the same high school I did, the same little country high school in Tennessee.
Right.
And he flunked out of Tennessee the same time I did. He went into the Army. And he got out of the Army before me because his enlistment was only 3 years, mine was 4.
Right.
And when he got out, he was living at a funeral home. At that time in Knoxville, Tennessee, the funeral homes operated the ambulances, the emergency ambulances.
Okay.
They don't anymore, but they did back then.
All right.
And in the summer of '64, when I didn't know where I was going to stay, I had already university housing was already filled up, and I was thinking about trying to find off-campus housing somewhere at someone's home, and I got a letter from him, and he said, "We need schoolboys at the funeral home where he was staying." And what happened? The funeral home gave the university student a room free of charge. And the only thing we had to do was on our night, every third or fourth night, we had to go with the ambulance driver as an attendant. And, that wasn't much. And so it was really a nice, beautiful funeral home near campus. And since I had a car, I could drive into town. And that's where I stayed when I was at the University of Tennessee.
Okay. When you got out of the service, did you use your GI Bill?
I did. Well, no, I didn't at first because it wasn't available. Actually, I had been in school for almost 2 years, when it was reactivated. Mm-hmm. Actually, when I first got out of the Air Force, it was not available. For the last, I think, 3 quarters,
Right.
I did get $110 a month in GI Bill
Okay. To go to school?
to go to school.
Okay. All right. All right. All right.
And the funeral home paid us $15 a week. And I actually borrowed some money that last year. And I was blessed I was able to get through.
Okay. All right. So while you were going to school, were you working?
Just at the funeral home.
Just okay.
Now,
So,
another thing the funeral homes would do, they would pay us $6 to work what they call work a funeral if they needed extra help with handling the flowers.
right.
And you know, if it worked into our schedule, it was totally voluntary. We didn't have to unless we wanted to.
Right.
Or more times, maybe even more. You know, every week or two, I would usually volunteer to work a funeral and pick up $6 extra.
Okay. All right.
So,
What did you do with your money?
well, poor college boys, you know, we needed to eat. We had to pay our own meal.
Okay. All right. So, you finished school while you were at the funeral home,
Right.
and what did you do after you finished school?
Well, I actually had 4 different job offers when I graduated from the University of Tennessee, and one of the job offers was Alcoa, just very near to Knoxville. It's I went to work for Alcoa.
Aluminum.
Aluminum. My first job. I had a job offer from Western Electric in North Carolina and McDonnell Douglas in St. Louis, Missouri. But I had my heart set on a girl that lived in Knoxville at the time, so I wanted to stay around Knoxville, so I went to work at Alcoa.
Okay.
And that was in 1967, and in 1968 I married my sweetheart wife, and we were married for almost 45 years.
Congratulations. Okay. Let's see. So you use a GI Bill. All right. So you maintain your close friendships. Have you joined any veterans organizations? You belong to any?
No, I actually had in my file here, I actually applied for sent off for some veterans, thinking about help with the VA loan and so forth, but I actually never used any. I actually never used any of my veterans benefits since I've been out. I went to the VA hospital 4 or 5 years ago to see if they would help with my medical bills.
Right.
And the information I got was, since I have insurance and I'm an engineer, I'm paid well, my means testing says no, I could not get any veterans benefits.
Really?
Medical benefits.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
I know there's a veterans cemetery here also, but I have already, long before they put the veterans cemetery in, my wife and I had already purchased our
Secured that.
cemetery plot here in the military section of the cemetery here in West Palm Beach.
Okay. Just a couple more questions.
Okay.
How did your service and experiences affect your life? What kind of influence did the military have on your life?
Well, it gave me the satisfaction of service. You know, serving your country is a satisfying thing, and especially, you know, since 9/11 and since the Gulf Wars, people have respected military. You know, when you're in a meeting of some kind, they usually ask the veterans to stand and be recognized, and
Right.
you know, they applaud veterans. And so having served is satisfying.
All right. Well, is there anything else that you'd like to add that we have not covered in this interview?
Can't think of anything else.
I want to thank you for your service, and thank you for your time, and thanks for a great interview.
Thank you for yours. Thank you for your service.
Absolutely.